Okay, 4 seconds, and we start. Good morning, Kahal Kadosh, Shavua Tov Mevorach. Today, Monday, the 4th day of Tammuz, corresponding to the 14th of June, 2021. Today's class, graciously sponsored by Jacob Dweck family, Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved uncle, Moshe Ben Victoria, Alav Shalom. And today's class also dedicated anonymously, Le'ilui Nishmat, Daniel Meir Ben Israel and Marta, Alav Shalom. Iratzon that through the words of Torah, the Neshamot will have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Today, the 4th day of Tammuz, is the Yortzeit or the Hilulah of the great Hacham known as Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbi Yaakov Ben Meir. Rabbeinu Tam is known for many matters. One of them is the Tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. The second pair of Tefillin that many people wear is in honor of the great Rabbi Rabbi Yaakov Ben Meir. Additionally, you have, for example, Rabbeinu Tam for the time when Shabbat finishes. When people do 72 minutes, instead of an hour, instead of 40 to 42 minutes, many people do 72. That's why we announce on the schedule, Shabbat ends at a certain time. Rabbeinu Tam is usually an extra half an hour. That shita also comes from Rabbeinu Tam, the grandson of, announced on the schedule, Shabbat ends at a certain time. Rabbeinu Tam is usually an extra half an hour. That shita also comes from Rabbeinu Tam, the grandson of Rashi. His brother, Rabbi Shmuel Ben Meir, was the famous Rashbam. Rashbam, Boker Tov, is one of the commentators in certain chapters of the Talmud upon the passing of Rashi. Thank you so much for your kindness. And without any hesitation, Rabbeinu Tam is also known as the Baal Tosafot. The Tosafot, if you look at the page of the Talmud, we have the Talmud text in the middle. If you have the book in front of you, Rashi on the right, and the Tosafot on the left. Rashi comes to explain the concept of the Talmud and to translate certain aspects of the Talmud. The Tosafot, which in English means the addition, many times questions Rashi's interpretation of the Talmud. And sometimes you say, Rabbeinu Tam Omer, this is the grandson of Rashi. So when he was asked, we don't understand you. You are debating your grandfather, Rashi, the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. He says, Rabbeinu Tam, I'm looking for the emet. I'm looking for the truth. And when you look for the emet, you're allowed to disagree with kavod and respect. We know that Rabbeinu Tam lived in a very dangerous time in Jewish history. He lived in the time of the Crusades, the 11th, and regretfully, the Crusades don't have a clean slate with the Jewish people. Actually, it's not called the Crusades, but the Crusaders. The Crusade was the actual historical event, and it says that literally they came to attack him because regretfully, through history, the enemies of the Jewish people understood that if they are able to remove the leadership, meaning to say the Hachamim from Am Israel, so that will cause the spirit of the Jewish people to be shattered, and once the spirit is shattered, then the Jewish people become an easy prey. This is what happened also during the time of the Gezerot, Tahbetat, Haim Tovim. This is also what, that's 1648, 1649. This is exactly what happened also that we discussed yesterday during the communist regime in Russia, that being an observant Jew was basically a one-way ticket to Siberia. This is what happened in the time of the Holocaust. In the time of the Holocaust, one of the first law and order decisions was remove the Hachamim and the yeshiva students. Why? Because they knew that the Hachamim are able to keep the spirit alive despite the challenges. So it says that Rabbeinu Tam actually was captured and they stabbed him several times. And one of these times was on the head of Rabbeinu Tam. And by a miracle, a goy saved the life of Rabbeinu Tam. This is in the year 1146, because he that the accusations against the Hachamim, like the caliber of Rabbeinu Tam, were completely unfounded. One of the reasons Rabbeinu Tam was called Tam, why Rabbeinu Tam is called Tam? The word Tam is not a common word. In our Torah we find it when the Torah describes Yaakov Avinu. The pasuk says Yaakov ish Tam. What's the meaning of the word Tam? Tam, although in English may mean simple, but Tam also means wholesome. That Rabbeinu Tam was able to develop a near perfection madrega, spiritual level, during his lifetime. Now, I did some homework, that's why I have 3 pages about Rabbeinu Tam. So he gives here more historical background. I'll tell you quickly. Rabbeinu Tam was born actually in France in the year 1100. His mother was Yocheved, one of the 3 daughters of Rashi. If you remember, Rashi, Rabbeinu Shlomo Ishaki, did not have boys, only had 3 girls. But these girls had such a tremendous amount of Torah knowledge that they will answer certain Talmudic disputes and settle halachic questions. According to some, they used to put on tefillin. I know, that was an exception. Yes, that's what's written in the books of history, that they were such a holy women, but obviously the rabbinate, for many halachic reasons. As I said before, he had a brother by the name of the Rashbam, Rabbeinu Shmuel bar Meir. Interesting enough, Rabbeinu Tam had great financial success. He came from a family of wealth, and he had a good relationship with the governor of the province back in France. And when his father passed away, he was appointed to become the great Rosh Yeshiva in his town. And he had 80 students that they were authors of the Tosafot. You have to understand. You know, when it comes to a rabbi mentioning the Talmud, what was the test that a rabbi needed to go through in order to be mentioned in the Talmud? Do you know the answer to that question? A rabbi to be mentioned in the Talmud needed to have the capacity of resurrecting a dead person. Tahiyat Metim. If they had such a level of holiness and godliness, they were mentioned in the Talmud. Now, for you or me to question the Talmud, we are nothing. But go back 800 years ago. Rabbeinu Tam, as I said before, he lived through the 11th century. Today we are in the 21st century. Yani 1,000 years ago, Rabbeinu Tam lived. Who preceded Rabbeinu Tam? Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, Rabbeinu Yonah, yani the giants of the generation. Rabbeinu Tam, 1 second. So remember how I described the page of the Talmud? We have the Talmud in the center, Rashi on the left, and the Tosafot on the Mehillah. Rashi on the right, Tosafot on the left. And what is the mission of the Tosafot? To bring questions or contradictions about the explanations of Rashi's commentary in the Gemara or in the Chumash, Haim Tovim. We know that Rashi is a commentator, the foremost commentator of the Chumash. You can't learn Chumash without the basic explanation of Rashi. Rashi is like the seasoning to the Chumash. That's why Rashi comes to explain the Chumash. And it says that Rabbeinu Tam became a great Talmid Chacham. And as I said before, on the second day of Shavuot, was made an attempt on the life of Rabbeinu Tam, because since they heard that his father passed away and he inherited wealth, they wanted to remove Rabbeinu Tam in order to steal the wealth that Rabbeinu Tam's father left for him. What was the purpose of the wealth? In order to foment the power of the Crusades, and the final destination point was what? To conquer Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. So the history that we say today, the Arabs want Yerushalayim, etc., is not a new story. This is another sequel, like Mission Impossible. Next version, of Abdil. Ben Kodesh Lahor, but I know you can relate to that. That's why I brought that an example. So already in the time of the Crusades, already the golden prize, Yerushalayim Ir Kodesh. So it says that after this tragedy that almost killed Rabbeinu Tam, he moved to Troy. Troy, I believe, Troye, I think that is in France. Although Rashi, his grandfather, lived in the city of Worms. I was in the city of Worms personally a few times to visit the house of Rashi, the yeshiva of Rashi, and the mikveh of Rashi. You ever go to the kosher grocery store? There is a wine named Rashi. Have you heard of it?
I buy it.
So you buy it? Beautiful. It's not expensive. Okay, for Kiddush, a Kiddush wine. Okay, look at the label of the wine and read the fine print. That picture of the label is exactly how the house and the yeshiva of Rashi looks today in Worms, Germany. It was destroyed during the Holocaust, but the German government, as part of the restitution package to the Jewish people, committed to rebuild Jewish sites the way originally were created. And if you go there, you see exactly how the label looks. So we're going back more or less almost 1,000 years. So this is where Rabbeinu Tam went, and he also, Rabbeinu Tam, wrote a sefer called Sefer HaYashar. Also, he was a close friend of Rabbeinu Avraham Ibn Ezra, the famous Ibn Ezra, commentator of the Perashiyot in the Chumash. He lived in Spain. But you have to understand that back then in the day, didn't exist. I don't think there were Jewish people even in America in the 1100s. I think the first time was 1600 and change, when they came to New Amsterdam, Rhode Island. Remember that, right? More or less. I'm not sure exactly. I know a bit of history, not much, but more or less you understand. The world, America, as being a place for Judaism, was non-existent. America was only discovered by Columbus, right? 1492, right? Now, so Judaism was divided basically in three areas in the world. The Middle East, Israel, obviously. The Middle East, whatever that meant. Maybe Northern Africa, Egypt, Morocco, all the northern Africans that through history they did have powerful and great Jewish communities, and exactly as our good friend said, Europe. So Europe was the hub of the greatest Talmidei Hachamim in the 11th century, till the Inquisition. Once the Inquisition came, Kaddish, Khalas. Spain gone, Portugal gone, even France, it diminished. Actually, in France, we discussed this the other day, the tragic Gezerah, that they burned the 24 chariots with Torah books. So we need to understand, Europe, what we see today, that there is like a Muslim rising in Europe today, couple of centuries back, it was run by Islam. Islam, compared to Christianity, is a very young religion. How old is Islam, you think?
700.
Chazaku Baruch. So Islam is 1400 years. Christianity goes much further, already from the time of the Roman Empire, the time of the second Bet HaMikdash, the time of Rabbi Akiva, 2100 years. So through those years, what do you think was the crucifixion and the persecution of the Romans? And it trickled down to Europe. And that's why we had great years in Europe, but regretfully, we also had challenging years in Europe. Today, European Jewry, regretfully, is diminishing. Between assimilation and people making aliyah to Israel, we don't know for how many more years this will continue, but let's hope and pray that Mashiach comes later on. Now, it says here, the biography of Rabbeinu Tam, that one of the things that it pains Rabbeinu Tam the most, not only the persecution of the Christians against the Jewish people, but it says how fast the Jewish people were dying in Europe. Some of them execution for no crime, just anti-Semitism. And some of them forced to convert to Christianity, which this was the main mission of the Catholic Church during the Inquisition. What was the whole idea of the Inquisition? We discussed this in the earlier class today, or yesterday, I believe. The topic of Marranos, the Anusim, the covered Jews who lived in Spain. I think I said it yesterday morning. Rabbeinu Tam passed away at the age of 71, and it says for many, many generations, in the month of Sivan, Rabbeinu Tam established a suggested fast day in commemoration of all the Jewish people that were executed alive in France and in England.
When he was buried.
What day is that?
He doesn't say. Where Rabbeinu Tam is buried, supposedly in Troyes, France. But no one knows where the kever of Rabbeinu Tam is, to my knowledge at least, and no one knows for sure where the kever of Rashi is. No one knows. It goes even further. We have in the loss of tefillin, and I have the chart to be able to decipher the differences in the tefillins. Okay? Now, there are different tefillim. There are 4 basic tefillin, right?
I told 2 only.
No, 4. 4. Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, Ra'abad, Shimusha, Rabbah. Those are the 4 levels of tefillin. Everybody wears one. Many people wear a second. Kabbalists prayed mincha with a third one, And certain tzaddikim use 4 pairs of tefillin a day. Not long ago was the Lubavitcher Rebbe alav shalom. They say upon him, I haven't seen nothing in writing, but somebody told me this the other day, that he used to wear 4 tefillin a day. I don't know that. I was not able to verify it, but I do know that in Kabbalistic circles, they do mincha with tefillin. And occasionally you may see a great rabbi that may come from Israel, that he puts on tefillin for mincha. Some people put tefillin on mincha because they couldn't put it in shaharit. You understand? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyah b'baruch.
What about the ones that wear 2 of them at the same time? Which ones are they?
Okay, so from a Kabbalistic perspective, if the tefillin is small enough, you can wear both tefillimot together. That is the ruling of the Ben Ish Hai and many others. Rav Shia and Rabbeinu Tam together. So this way you do the entire prayer with both tefillin. And by the way, we don't say in this matter one is right and one is wrong. We say in this matter, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim hayim. They're both right, and that's what's written in the halakha. They are both right opinions because both of them have legs to stand on. Why yes Rashi and why yes Rabbeinu Tam? So I'll tell you quickly. According to Rashi and Maimonides, this is exactly the way that we put on the first tefillin, that the perashiot are kesidran. Kesidran means the way they are written in the Sefer Torah. So, which perasha for tefillin? Kadesh li kol bechor. That's why the Hazan starts by the Be'er Amonai Moshe lemor Kadesh li kol bechor. That is in the tefillin. The second perasha, vehaya ki ebiyacha. Those are the first 2 Torah portions that we have the mitzvah of tefillin. The third perasha in the Torah is Shema Israel. Ukshartam leot al yadecha. The fourth perasha is Behaya in Shamoah. The first 2 perashiot are in Sefer Shemot. Perashat Bo. Perasha number 3 is in Perasha Beit Hanan. Perasha number 4 is in Perashat Ekev. So that's the proper chronological order of the Torah. First comes Perashat Bo, then comes Perashat Ekev, then comes Perashat Mehila. Beit Hanan and Ekev, Mehila. Clear. Comes Rabbeinu Tam, and it says, I hear you, but the order of the Perashiot needs to be different. Rabbeinu Tam says, first Perasha, Kadesh li kol bechor. Second perasha, Behaya, Ki Aviyacha Hashem. Second perasha. So far, so good. So what's the disagreement? Perasha number 3 and perasha number 4. According to the Rashi, put the perasha the way it's written in the Torah. According to Rabbeinu Tam, he says no. Vehaya in Shamoah is about the mitzvot of the Torah. And Shema Israel is Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you have the golden seal according to Rabbeinu Tam. Comes the second pair.
That's the only difference? That
Yes. No, and in order for you to know that you're wearing Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam, you look at the tefillin and you see sometimes that the backs of the tefillin, you should see it all the time, has hair sticking up. That hair, you have the tefillin with you?
Yes.
Show me the tefillin of the head. Let's see if I see the hair. Let's see both of them.
Compare it.
No, it all depends on the when the tefillin was made, if they were conscientious of this. See if you see her in the tefillin. You see it there? Beautiful. Excellent. 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 Okay, I see it. Both of the tefillin have it. Let me just put it here. You see this hair sticking up? Can you see it? Why do we have this hair sticking up? If it's me stitching the tefillin, I want it to be a perfect design. Forget about this sticking up. What is it? It's like you went to the haircut, took a haircut, and suddenly the guy brings the mirror, you put the kippah, and what do you have? 3 hairs standing up. What do you tell the guy? Cut them. So why doesn't the sofer cut this? The short answer is that this string is the reminder of the sin of the egel, because the hair is from the egel. The hair of stitching is from the calf. Is from the tail of the animal. So this reminds us the egel. Rashi comes out to the side. So how do you know if the tefillin is Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam? I'm not going to mix them. I'm not going to... Okay? So we have both tefillin in front. How do I know? I don't have the bag that says Rashi. So I look where the hair is. In the middle is Rabbeinu Tam. On the side, on the right, is Rashi. So if you put it in your head, right? You have on the right, you have the hair sticking up. So Rabbeinu Tam moves one compartment in order to notice the difference. Thank you very much.
Another one, Rabbi.
Make sure the strap is different color.
Have a sofer paint this and close it, perhaps. Now, one more. How do you know in the resuot? So many sofrim do something very good. You see how this resuah ends in an angle? So when they do the Rabbeinu Tam, they snip the angle and you have a rectangular end. So this way you have 2 simanim now on the Rabbeinu Tam. The egel, the hair, and the bottom of the resuah. Some of the cases they don't cut the resuah, but they put in red marker Rabbeinu Tam.
Both sides black.
Right. No, both sides black is actually comes from the Ben Ish Hai. It says shehorot ka'orev. The resuot of the tefillin should be both of them black, the way David Shlomo HaMelech, thank you very much, writes in the book of Shir Hashirim. But the bottom line, just to wrap this up, both opinions are correct. Now here brings a story, a funny story. That a fellow and he did not bring his tefillin, right? And the Gabbai says, the Shamosh says, I'm sorry, I only have the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam available. So this fellow says, not a problem, let me put it on. By the time Rabbeinu Tam comes, I'll be done with my prayer. My dear friends, I'd like to say everybody Shavua Tov Mevorach. Zechuto Yagen Aleinu, the great merit of the great Rabbeinu Tam. And for those that came in a few moments ago, remember why Rabbeinu Tam was called Rabbeinu Tam? Not because he was a simple person. It's because he was a great tzaddik who aimed to become the best that he was able to become. He didn't settle. He wanted to achieve near perfection, like the level of Yaakov Avinu, alav hashalom. And he achieved greatness in life. I mean, the fact that 1,000 years ago that he passed away, and we talk about him, and we know halachot about him, and we have a tefillin after him, and in the Gemara learning you have the Rabbeinu Tam aspect. This is what the Gemara writes very clearly, Tzadikim b'mitatam nikraim hayim. The righteous, despite the fact that they are gone from the world, they are spiritually alive. We say Tizkela Mitzvot to the generous sponsors of today's class and the Neshamot of Daniel Meir Ben Israel Marta and Moshe ben Victoria Aleim Shalom have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. We'll see each other Be'ezrat Hashem tomorrow morning. Have a great day. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Hanani ben Akashia Omer. רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיכך. הרבה להם תורה מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפש למען צדקו,